By the time I accepted that I was going to die, my ship had already stopped pretending it cared about physics. Every alarm was screaming in a different language, the control panel was flashing colors I was pretty sure weren't approved by any safety manual, and the autopilot had decided that creative interpretation was an acceptable response to catastrophic engine failure. Outside the viewport, space stretched endlessly, calm and indifferent, like it had just watched millions of disasters and was bored of them. I floated in my seat, strapped in by belts that suddenly felt symbolic rather than useful, and laughed. It wasn't heroic laughter. It was the kind of laugh you make when your brain runs out of logical options and decides sarcasm is the only emotional currency left. So this is it, I muttered to myself. First independent mission. First deep space assignment. First time trusting a ship built by the lowest bidder. The oxygen gauge blinked at me with passive-aggressive politeness. I blinked back. Then the universe blinked first. A shadow slid across the stars, too large, too smooth, too deliberate to be debris. The sensors that still worked began recalibrating themselves like they had suddenly remembered their purpose in life. Something enormous and elegant drifted into view, a ship, but not like any human design I had ever seen. No harsh angles. No exposed machinery. Just flowing metallic curves, glowing lines, and an aura of quiet confidence. Before I could decide whether to panic or pray, a beam of light wrapped around my crippled vessel like a gentle hand. The next thing I knew, gravity returned with a polite apology. The hatch opened without a sound. She stepped inside like she had always belonged there. Tall, poised, and impossible to ignore, she moved with the kind of grace that made gravity feel optional. Her skin had a faint luminous tint, not glowing, just alive in a way that made human skin feel unfinished. Her eyes were sharp, curious, and unsettlingly calm. The uniform she wore looked ceremonial and practical at the same time, like she could command fleets or dance at galactic royal events without changing clothes. For a second, I wondered if hypoxia had finally taken over and my brain had decided to die creatively. Then she spoke. "Remain still," she said, her voice smooth but firm, like a commander who had never been ignored in her life. I raised both hands slowly. "Great plan. I was just thinking about doing exactly that." She studied me with intense focus, scanning me with a device that hummed softly. Her expression shifted through subtle emotions I couldn't quite decode: relief, curiosity, something like satisfaction. "You are alive," she said. "Barely," I replied. "But yes, technically speaking." She nodded once, as if confirming a complex theory about the universe. Then she stepped closer and released me from the restraints with quick, precise movements. Her hands were warm. Very warm. I noticed this in a way that felt scientifically unnecessary. "You were in critical danger," she said. "Yeah," I said, glancing at my ruined ship. "It was one of those days." She didn't laugh. Instead, she looked at me the way archaeologists look at rare artifacts, like I was something fragile, valuable, and slightly confusing. "You have been rescued," she said. I exhaled slowly. "I figured that part out. Thanks for the timing, by the way. Really appreciate not dying alone in space." She tilted her head slightly, processing my words. "Your gratitude has been registered." "Good," I said. "I was worried it might get lost in translation." Her eyes lingered on me longer than necessary, then she turned and gestured toward the hatch. "Come. Your presence is required aboard my vessel." "Required?" I repeated. "That sounds official." "It is." Her ship was even more impressive from the inside. Everything felt alive: walls that responded to touch, floors that adjusted to movement, lights that changed according to mood or temperature or maybe her emotions. I felt like I had stepped into a civilization that had solved problems humanity hadn't even admitted existed yet. She led me through corridors that curved like rivers, until we reached a chamber that looked less like a control room and more like a ceremonial hall. Floating holographic symbols filled the air, rotating slowly like thoughts made visible. She stood in the center and faced me. "For the record," I said, trying to sound calm while my brain screamed in 10 different directions. I'm very grateful. Truly. But if this is the part where you tell me I've accidentally violated 17 interstellar laws, I'd like to request a lawyer. She ignored the joke. Instead, she extended her hand, and a holographic panel materialized between us. Symbols rearranged themselves, translating into words I could understand. She looked at me with absolute seriousness. By the laws of my people, she said, a life rescued creates an unbreakable obligation. I frowned. That sounds dramatic. It is precise, she corrected. The panel brightened, and the translated text appeared clearly. I read it once. Then again. Then a third time, hoping the words would rearrange themselves into something less ridiculous. They did not. Wait, I said slowly. Did that just say, I owe you one night of companionship? Her expression remained perfectly calm. Yes. I stared at her. She stared back. The universe waited. Okay, I said carefully. I think we might be having a translation issue. There is no error, she replied. Right, I said, nodding too fast. Of course. Because interstellar civilizations definitely use phrases like that in formal legal documents. She lifted her chin slightly, as if defending centuries of tradition. It is an ancient custom. Of course it is. I tried to process the situation logically, but logic had clearly resigned from duty. So, I said, forcing a casual tone, when you say night of companionship, what exactly does that mean? She paused for a fraction of a second, as if choosing words that would not explode my brain. It means, she said, that we must share a complete cycle of experiences together. I blinked. Experiences. Yes. My imagination immediately betrayed me. Romantic settings. Alien moonlight. Soft glowing skies. Dramatic music. Meaningful eye contact. Maybe something poetic, mysterious, slightly dangerous. I swallowed. That doesn't sound terrible, I said. Her gaze sharpened slightly, as if she had detected an assumption she did not approve of. You misunderstand, she said. Oh? She tapped the holographic panel, and new symbols appeared, images, diagrams, schedules, and what looked suspiciously like a checklist. My confidence began to die quietly. According to our tradition, she continued, a night of companionship includes physical coordination challenges, emotional synchronization rituals, cultural integration tasks, and competitive sustenance creation. I stared at the floating list. Then at her. Then back at the list. Competitive, what? Sustenance creation, she repeated. You mean cooking? Yes. I laughed nervously. Somewhere deep inside me, the part of my brain that loved chaos was thrilled. The rest of me felt like I had just signed up for the strangest date in the history of the galaxy. So, I said slowly, just to be clear, you rescued me from certain death. Yes. And now I legally owe you an entire night of whatever this is? Yes. And there's no option to just send a thank you card? Her eyes narrowed slightly. Refusal, she said calmly, would be considered an insult of the highest order. I nodded. Great, I said. Love that for me. For a moment neither of us spoke. She studied me again, not like an artifact this time, but like a variable in an equation she was trying to solve. You seem anxious, she said. Me? I laughed too loudly. No. I'm just processing the fact that my survival now involves galactic contracts and mysterious alien traditions. Her lips curved almost imperceptibly. I wasn't sure if it was a smile, but it felt like one. You will not regret this, she said. I looked at her, at the glowing ship, at the impossible stars outside the viewport, and at the contract floating between us like destiny with a sense of humor. Somewhere in the back of my mind, a quiet voice whispered that nothing about this situation was normal. Another voice whispered that normal was overrated. I took a breath. Fine, I said. Her eyes brightened. The contract sealed itself with a soft flash of light. And in that moment, I had no idea that the night I thought would be romantic was about to become the most bizarre, hilarious, and strangely meaningful experience of my entire life. When I agreed to the contract, I imagined something simple. Maybe awkward conversation under alien stars. Maybe strange but beautiful scenery. Maybe something that felt like a date, just with slightly different physics and a lot more glowing architecture. What I did not imagine was being handed a sleek metallic suit that looked like it had been designed by someone who had never seen a human body but felt extremely confident about guessing. "Put this on," she said, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. I held the suit up, examining it like it might bite me. "Is this necessary?" "Yes." "Is it dangerous?" "No." "Is it humiliating?" She paused for half a second. "Define humiliating." I sighed and started putting it on. The suit adjusted itself the moment it touched my skin, tightening and reshaping until it fit perfectly. It was warm, flexible, and disturbingly comfortable. I felt like I had just been upgraded from human to deluxe human. She watched the process with focused interest, as if she were observing a scientific experiment rather than a person struggling not to trip over alien footwear. "You look functional," she said finally. "That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me," I replied. She didn't react, but I noticed her eyes linger for a fraction longer than necessary. "Follow me," she said. We stepped onto a platform that extended from the ship like a blade of light. Beyond it, space stretched endlessly, but something else was there too, streams of glowing energy weaving through the void like cosmic rivers. My stomach tightened. "Just so we're clear," I said carefully, "this is the part where you explain what we're about to do. We are beginning the first shared activity," she said. "And that would be?" She looked at the glowing currents with what I could only describe as pride. "Star surfing." I stared at her. Then at the stars. Then back at her. "Right," I said slowly. "Of course. Because when humans say night of companionship, we usually start with dinner, but your culture apparently starts with extreme interstellar sports." She stepped onto the edge of the platform with absolute confidence. "You must synchronize your movement with mine," she said. "If you fail, you may experience mild discomfort." "Mild discomfort like?" She considered this. "Temporary loss of orientation. Emotional dissonance. Possible screaming." I swallowed. Before I could reconsider my life choices, she reached out and grabbed my hand. Her grip was firm, warm, and surprisingly steady. "Do not resist," she said. "I wasn't planning to," I lied. Then she stepped forward. The platform dissolved beneath our feet. For a moment, I was sure I was about to die again. But instead of falling, we landed on something invisible yet solid, an invisible wave of energy moving through space. The suit reacted instantly, stabilizing my body, adjusting my balance. The stars blurred. The universe moved. And I screamed in a way that future generations of my family would probably feel in their DNA. She didn't scream. She laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was bright, unrestrained, and shockingly human. "Lean forward," she said, pulling me closer. "I am leaning forward," I shouted. "More." I leaned forward more. The energy wave accelerated, curving around the glowing star like a ribbon. Colors exploded around us, cosmic winds brushing against my skin, gravity bending in ways that felt illegal. At some point, fear turned into exhilaration. At some point after that, I realized I was holding on to her not just because I needed balance, but because I didn't want to let go. When the wave finally slowed, I was breathing hard, laughing uncontrollably, and questioning every life decision that had led me here. She released my hand slowly. "You adapted quickly," she said. "Thanks," I said, trying to sound dignified while my legs felt like decorative objects rather than functional limbs. She studied me with renewed interest. "Humans are more resilient than our records suggested." "We get that a lot," I said. We returned to the ship, and before I could recover, she guided me into another chamber. This one was filled with soft light and floating orbs that pulsed gently like breathing thoughts. "This is the emotional synchronization ritual," she said. I blinked. "Of course it is." She stepped into the center of the room and gestured for me to join her. I hesitated. "This doesn't involve needles, does it?" "No." "Mind control?" "No." "Permanent personality changes?" She paused. "Unlikely." I stepped forward. The orbs responded instantly, moving closer, surrounding us in a sphere of light. The air felt thicker, warmer, charged with something I couldn't name. "Relax," she said quietly. "Easy for you to say." She closed her eyes. Reluctantly, I did the same. The moment I did, the world shifted. Images flooded my mind. Not mine. Hers. Endless skies over alien cities. Vast halls filled with silent figures. Training arenas where she stood alone, perfecting skills no one praised. Ceremonies where she was admired but never truly understood. Long nights spent watching stars, wondering if connection was something her species had sacrificed for strength. The emotions hit harder than the images. Loneliness. Duty. Pride. And something else. Curiosity. Then my own memories surfaced. Earth. Noise. Laughter. Friends arguing over meaningless things. Music blasting through cheap speakers. Family dinners that felt chaotic but warm. Nights spent staring at the sky, dreaming of something bigger, something unknown. I felt her reaction to those memories like ripples in water. Surprise. Confusion. Something like wonder. When the orbs finally faded, we stood facing each other in silence. She opened her eyes first. For the first time since I met her, her expression wasn't controlled. It was soft. "Your world is loud," she said quietly. "Yeah," I said. "We're not great at silence." She nodded slowly, as if considering that idea for the first time. Without warning, the moment broke. A panel slid open in the wall, revealing what looked like a futuristic kitchen filled with devices I didn't recognize and ingredients that definitely didn't exist on Earth. She turned toward it with renewed seriousness. "The next phase begins," she said. I stared at the kitchen. Then at her. "Please tell me this is the part where we eat," I said. "Yes," she said. Relief flooded me. "However," she added, "you must compete with me." My relief evaporated. "Compete how?" "In the creation of sustenance." "You mean cooking?" I said. "Yes." I looked at the alien ingredients glowing, floating, wriggling slightly, and occasionally emitting sounds that suggested opinions. Then I looked at her. She rolled up the sleeves of her uniform with calm determination. For a terrifying moment, I realized something. I hadn't signed up for a romantic night. I had signed up for an alien marathon of impossible experiences. And somewhere between star surfing, emotional mind sharing, and intergalactic cooking battles, something far more dangerous than fear was starting to grow in my chest. I was beginning to like her. And that realization felt a lot more frightening than falling through space. The kitchen was alive. That was the only way I could describe it. Panels floated in midair, surfaces shifted shape when touched, and ingredients hovered in transparent spheres like they were waiting to be judged by the universe. Some glowed softly, some pulsed like tiny hearts, and one suspicious purple object occasionally made a sound that felt emotionally manipulative. I stood there holding a metal tool that looked like a spoon but had too many edges to be trusted. She stood opposite me, calm, focused, and far too confident. "State your strategy," she said. "My strategy," I repeated, glancing at the floating ingredients, "is survival." She didn't smile, but her eyes flickered with something that looked dangerously close to amusement. "The purpose of this challenge," she explained, "is to evaluate harmony, adaptability, and creative intelligence." "So basically," I said, "you want to see if I can cook without accidentally starting a diplomatic incident?" Yes. I took a deep breath and reached for an ingredient that looked vaguely like a glowing fruit. The moment I touched it, it split into 3 smaller versions of itself and began orbiting my hand. I froze. She watched with scientific interest. Is that normal? I asked. Yes, she said. Normal for who? For it. I nodded slowly, accepting that logic had officially resigned from this reality. She moved with effortless precision, selecting ingredients that responded to her touch like loyal soldiers. Her hands moved quickly, confidently, as if she had trained for this her entire life. Colors blended, liquids transformed, shapes rearranged themselves around her will. Meanwhile, I was negotiating with a glowing vegetable. Listen, I whispered to it. I don't know what you are, but I promise to treat you with respect if you cooperate. It blinked. I decided that was agreement. As the competition progressed, something strange happened. At first, it was chaos. I dropped things. Things dropped themselves. At one point, a floating container opened unexpectedly and released a cloud of glittering dust that made my hair stand on end and my emotions feel slightly amplified. She watched me struggle without intervening. I expected her to laugh. She didn't. Instead, she observed quietly, as if every mistake I made was data she was carefully storing. At some point, I realized I was laughing. Not nervously. Not sarcastically. Actually laughing. I was standing in an alien kitchen, cooking unknown substances with an alien woman who had legally obligated me to spend a night with her, and instead of fear, I felt something dangerously close to fun. She noticed the change immediately. You appear less tense, she said. I'm starting to suspect, I replied, that your culture invented this ritual purely to embarrass guests. This is inaccurate, she said. Sure it is. Eventually, our dishes were complete. Hers looked elegant, balanced, and impossibly beautiful. Colors flowed into each other like art. Energy patterns shimmered across the surface, responding to her presence. Mine looked honest, slightly chaotic, questionable, but surprisingly aromatic. We stood side by side, examining our creations. For fairness, she said, we must taste both. I hesitated. You first, I suggested. She picked up a small piece of my dish and studied it like it might reveal the secrets of humanity. Then she tasted it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then her eyes widened slightly. I leaned forward. Well? She paused, analyzing sensations. It is irregular, she said slowly. Bad irregular or interesting irregular? She considered this. Interesting, she decided. I exhaled in relief. Then I tasted her dish. The moment it touched my tongue, my brain shut down all unnecessary processes to focus entirely on what was happening. Flavors unfolded in layers, emotions triggered by tastes I didn't even know existed. It was like eating music, memory, and light at the same time. I stared at her. She watched me with quiet intensity. You look stunned, she said. I think, I replied slowly, your people could conquer galaxies using food alone. She tilted her head slightly. This is a compliment? Very much so. For a moment neither of us spoke. The kitchen lights dimmed automatically, shifting into softer tones. The floating panels slowed their movement, as if the environment itself sensed the change in atmosphere. We moved away from the cooking area and sat on a curved platform that rose from the floor like a wave frozen in time. The silence between us wasn't awkward anymore. It was heavy. Not with tension, but with meaning. You did not behave as expected, she said quietly. I looked at her. Is that good or bad? She thought about it. Both, she said. I waited. She looked out toward a transparent wall that revealed the stars beyond the ship. Her reflection overlapped with distant galaxies, making her look like she belonged to both worlds at once. When I rescued you, she said, I assumed you would react with fear, gratitude, and obedience. Sounds about right, I said. But you reacted with humor, she continued. Confusion. Curiosity. You questioned the contract instead of simply accepting it. I question everything, I said. It's a survival instinct. She turned to look at me. In my culture, she said softly, obedience is considered strength. Emotion is considered distraction. Bonds are formed by duty, not choice. I listened quietly. You did not treat this night as duty, she said. You treated it as possibility. The word hung between us. I felt something shift in my chest. I didn't really have a choice, I said lightly. She studied me. You always had a choice, she said. For the first time since I met her, I saw uncertainty in her expression. She looked powerful, confident, almost untouchable. But beneath that, there was something fragile. Something human. I believed humans were impulsive and shallow, she admitted. Your records depict you as unpredictable, driven by desire and self-interest. That's not entirely wrong, I said. She shook her head slightly. You faced danger with humor. You faced tradition with questions. You faced me without submission. I met her gaze. And how do you feel about that? She hesitated. For a long moment, she didn't answer. Then she said something I didn't expect. I do not know. The honesty in her voice surprised me more than anything else that night. We sat there quietly, watching stars drift past. The contract floated invisibly between us now, not as a document, but as an idea. At some point, she spoke again. In my culture, she said, a night of companionship ends with evaluation. That sounds ominous, I said. It is not punishment, she said. It is clarity. I nodded slowly. Are you evaluating me right now? I asked. Yes. And? She looked at me carefully. Her gaze felt different now. Not analytical. Not superior. But curious. Something warmer. You are inefficient, she said. I blinked. Thanks. You are chaotic, she continued. Also accurate. You are emotionally inconsistent, she said. Okay, this is starting to feel personal. Then she paused. And yet, she said quietly, you are sincere. The word landed harder than I expected. I didn't joke this time. I didn't deflect. I just looked at her. For a moment, the vastness of space outside felt smaller than the distance between us. Somewhere deep inside me, a realization began to form. This night wasn't about obligation. It wasn't about contracts or traditions or alien customs. It was about two beings from different worlds trying to understand each other. And the most dangerous part wasn't the star surfing, or the emotional rituals, or the alien cooking battle. The most dangerous part was that I was starting to care. And judging by the way she was looking at me now, I wasn't the only one. The stars outside the ship looked different in the quiet that followed. Not brighter. Not closer. Just more honest. I wasn't sure how long we sat there without speaking. Time felt strange in that place, like it had decided to slow down out of curiosity. The lights around us had dimmed into soft, warm tones, and the distant hum of the ship felt less like machinery and more like breathing. She was still beside me, her posture straight but no longer rigid. For the first time, she looked tired. Not physically, her kind probably didn't even acknowledge fatigue the way humans did, but emotionally, like someone who had carried certainty for too long and suddenly discovered it wasn't as solid as she believed. The cycle is almost complete, she said quietly. I glanced at her. That sounds official. It is, she said. I waited, but she didn't continue immediately. Her gaze was fixed on the stars, not on me. In my culture, she said after a moment, when the night ends, the obligation ends. So, I said lightly, congratulations. You've officially fulfilled your legal requirement to confuse and terrify a human. She didn't respond to the joke. Instead, she raised her hand, and the air between us shimmered. The holographic contract reappeared, glowing softly, its symbols no longer intimidating but strangely fragile. This agreement is now complete, she said. The words felt heavier than they should have. For you, she added, there are no further responsibilities. I looked at the contract. Then at her. Then back at the contract. A part of me felt relieved. Another part of me felt something else entirely. So, I said slowly, that's it. Yes, she said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. She tapped the holographic panel, and lines of text began to dissolve, disappearing like mist. In accordance with tradition, she continued, you may return to your people. Your ship will be repaired. You will be escorted safely to human territory. I nodded. That's very generous, I said. She inclined her head slightly, acknowledging the statement. But she didn't look at me anymore. And that was the problem. For a moment, I imagined what would happen if I simply agreed. I would go back to Earth. Tell people about the strange alien civilization, the impossible rituals, the ridiculous cooking battle, the star surfing that almost gave me a cosmic heart attack. They would laugh. They would doubt. Life would go on. And she would remain here. Powerful. Distant. Certain. Alone. Something in my chest tightened. I stood up slowly. The movement caught her attention. She looked at me again, her expression unreadable. You should rest, she said. The transition back to human space may be disorienting. I'm fine, I said. She studied me. You appear conflicted. That obvious? Yes. I took a step closer. The contract continued dissolving in the air between us, its symbols fading one by one. Can I ask you something? I said. You may, she replied. Do you actually believe in this tradition? I asked. She paused. It has governed my people for centuries, she said. That wasn't the question, I said gently. She hesitated longer this time. I believed in it, she said finally. Past tense? Her eyes flickered. In my world, she said quietly, duty is considered purity. Choice is considered instability. Bonds formed without obligation are viewed as dangerous. Dangerous how? I asked. Because they cannot be controlled, she said. I nodded slowly. That sounds about right. She watched me closely. You do not seem afraid of that. I thought about it. About Earth. About humans. About how messy, emotional, irrational, and unpredictable we were. About how we fell in love without permission. About how we chose people even when logic told us not to. No, I said honestly. I think that's the best part. She looked at me like I had just said something impossible. The contract was almost gone now. Only a faint outline remained. When I rescued you, she said softly, I believed I was fulfilling tradition. I believed you would be grateful, obedient, and temporary. Temporary? I repeated. Yes, she said. Humans are often temporary in our records. I felt a strange mix of offense and understanding. But you were not temporary, she continued. Her voice was quieter now. From the moment you laughed in the face of death, I realized you were not what I expected. I smiled slightly. I get that a lot. She didn't smile back this time. Instead, she stepped closer. The distance between us felt suddenly very small. In my culture, she said, when the obligation ends, there is no reason to remain. I met her gaze. And what if there is a reason? I asked. Her eyes widened slightly. The last fragment of the contract dissolved into light. Silence filled the space between us. She looked at me as if she were seeing me for the first time. Not as a rescued human. Not as an obligation. Not as a cultural experiment. But as a choice. You are free, she said softly. I nodded. Yes, I said. Then I took a breath. And I'm not leaving. The words hung in the air. For a moment, she didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't even blink. You do not understand, she said slowly. There is no contract now. No duty. No tradition binding you to remain. I know, I said. She searched my face, as if trying to detect deception. Then why? She asked. I thought about star surfing. About her laughter. About the loneliness in her memories. About the way she had looked at human chaos with wonder. About how, somewhere between fear and absurdity, something real had formed. Because, I said simply, I don't feel like I owe you anything anymore. Her expression shifted. Confusion. Then something else. Hope. I feel like I want to stay, I continued. Her breath caught slightly. That tiny reaction felt more powerful than any alien technology. You are choosing this? She asked. Yes, I said. She stared at me as if choice itself were a foreign language. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, slowly, she raised her hand. The air shimmered again. But this time, no contract appeared. Instead, a single symbol formed between us. Not legal. Not ceremonial. Personal. This is not tradition, she said. Good, I said. Tradition almost got me killed twice tonight. For the first time, she laughed softly. Not the bright laughter from star surfing. Not the restrained amusement from the cooking battle. This was quieter. Warmer. Human. If you remain, she said, there will be no rules to guide us. I shrugged. Humans live like that all the time. She studied me for a moment longer. Then she lowered her hand. And in that simple gesture, something shifted between us. Not obligation. Not duty. Not rescue. Something else entirely. Outside the ship, a new cycle of light began to rise over the alien world. The stars slowly faded, replaced by colors I didn't have words for. She stood beside me, no longer as my rescuer, no longer as my captor, no longer as my obligation. Just as someone standing next to me by choice. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then she looked at me with quiet seriousness. Human, she said. Yes? Next time, she said, I will not rescue you. I raised an eyebrow. Should I be worried? Her eyes met mine. No, she said softly. Next time, I will invite you. And somehow, that felt far more dangerous than any contract ever could.